Tech support, contact center leadership, and their teams are trying to get a handle on how moving to experience management is going to change what they do every single day, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we really got to figure out is how does it change our jobs? So what questions do you think they need to ask themselves or, ask their teams and probably most importantly, ask their customers to help see into that future of where we're going to?
Sure. First, I do want to say one thing around that. So you're talking about the call centers and the service desks now, and I think something that was said for us defining this is it's not any one area alone at all, and so we have to. One of the things is let's recognize what that role is of support or that role is of any customer facing or employee facing entity, and where do they play in this experience space. So first of all, when we talk about the optimization framework for experience, we say that you've got to start with knowing where you are, right? What's the experience landscape? And I feel like the service desk and the call centers, they have a front row seat to that because they're hearing things all of the time. And so one of the questions is, first of all, why? Why are we even considering it? Probably because we're not doing as well as we think, right? Or we're getting complaints, or people aren't happy, or we're losing people from our company. They say they can't do their jobs, all these different things. And so that's the first thing, is just to look at, what is it? Why are we even saying this? And one of the reasons is probably because, we have to collect these hints and clues and then go figure out where is it that we have to take action. And they're getting the hints and clues all the time. They're getting them in comments, and Nate's going to share a really good example of how this works. And I will send that over to him in just a moment, but they hear things on an ongoing basis. And a lot of times that's not what we put in a ticket, right? And I think too, that too often on the support side, we start focusing on the numbers. And so we even rob them of their intuition or that ability to know about the relationship or care about the relationship or even know that the sentiment is important. And we're just so transactional based. So I think some of those questions would be, how do I get beyond transactions? How do I get beyond customer satisfaction? How do I really understand reality versus what we think it is based on what we're measuring? We've all heard about watermelon metrics. And when you hear Nate's story, I'm going to add two more questions. I want you to really tune into the fact that people on his call center took this initiative and did this. So what that means is they were in a culture that wasn't so rigid from a numbers perspective that they didn't feel like they didn't have the time to really listen to somebody and really understand. They weren't so focused on my ASA, my time to resolution, that they weren't in that moment with those people that they were talking to. So from that, after you hear his story, I think that as a leader, my question is, how do I empower my team to really tune in and understand and look at this from an experience perspective? And how do I enable them to help us to collect those hints and clues and know where to go from here? And I think that leads really nicely into my favorite story from Nate Brown.
So Nate, I'm going to ask you to tell that story, and then I'm going to come back with a question.
Okay.
But one thing I think is important, just like in every other relationship, especially parenting, part of that is modeling, right? How do you get them to stay tuned in and focused and hearing or listening rather than just hearing? And part of that as leaders is I think we've got to, model that experience for them. So,
And if you don't mind, may I add one more question before
absolutely.
Nate starts? Here, I have to put this in there because we're going to come back to it later. How do we build experience level agreements? And how do we survey for sentiment and do the pulse surveys and go beyond those customer sat surveys? Those are two really important questions. Okay, all you, Nate. Sorry, Tim.
No worries.
Gotta get that in there, Rae Ann. You got it.
Do you feel good? I feel so much better.
It's very important. So yeah, when I was working at UL and I was inside a smaller division of UL, I mean, UL's a 12,000 person organization, and this was a few years ago, but we were serving occupational health nurses and doctors on like a mini EMR system. So I mean, really critical type of support. And if the system wasn't working, like the stakes were high, like it really impacted these patients in a big way because they couldn't get the care that they needed. There was big delays and other things. And we just had become very transactional for a while there, to Rae Ann's point. I mean, that's how our brains work, right? We try to reduce energy. And so we always look for shortcuts. So as customer service professionals, what we generally do, and sometimes we're even incentivized to do, is get the customer off the phone, off the ticket, resolve as quick as you can, just get it done and make it go away. but there's a whole element to that interaction where there was an impact here. Something happened emotionally to this client, and they're expressing vulnerability by coming to you for a resolution, or something else. Maybe they're calling just to seek your advice as the guide. And a lot of times we miss that part. We're just trying to resolve the problem and make them go away, and they feel that. And our customers were feeling that. So actually, it was an HDI conference years ago where this little button was surfacing. It might have been Roy who even made them. And it was an HDI connect button. And I was sitting there thinking about that. I was like, I need to get my people physically in the habit of thinking about the actual relationship impact to this incident, this ticket. It's not just a ticket. You're relating to another person. You get to be the guide for them. They're the hero of the story. You are the guide. How can you be the guide in the best possible way? Well, it's thinking about what's really going on here, how we can be proactively looking for the next issue to help them to avoid, how we can make them feel better about the experience that they're having and not just resolve. And so we got these buttons and they flash and they're, and different things. But it was like this physical endowment of you are the voice of the customer. You're a personification of the fact that they have something going on, and you give the gift of that they're giving to you. You're giving that to the business so that we can strengthen our relationship with these customers over time. And it became a cool deal. And it worked really well within the customer service center because, people said right away, it's like, I have always felt bad about this because the feedback has always just gone into a vacuum through our CRM process. It's like, well, thank goodness we have this channel now. So we started to extend it to other teams and other things. But the story takes a bit of a twist here, Rae Ann, and I'm sorry if you didn't want me to go here, but I have to. I started giving this button out to the sales team, and a member of the sales team, she came to me and she's like, wait, so this is just for customer feedback? And I was like, yeah, that's what it does. You click it and you put it in this really short little form, and we do sentiment on it, and we close the loop on this together. And she's like, well, what about my button? Where's my button? I'm like, so like classic rookie air. Like I designed something for the customer. I endowed the customer with this privilege, this channel of listening that I had not done for my own people. And that was a critical oversight. And that's not a mistake I've made again since then, because it hit me pretty hard.
But I think to that point, Nate, that just shows that everybody needs to know about experience and everybody needs to be listening, whether it's a meeting or a sales call or, anything. It's everything matters. And certainly,
Yeah.
We'll talk later about the fact that I shouldn't say everything requires action, but we're trying to understand what matters most, right? So we do have to tune in and listen. So, and I think to your point too, just if you can just clarify that they weren't putting those comments in a ticket and making it about transactions.
No.
Right?
Yeah, you hit the button, and we were using Oracle Service Cloud at the time. And so it was just a really simple custom form that we created. What's going on and how did the customer feel about it? And what can we do to close the loop on this? And we were able to, at the time, start putting that into Cloud Cherry, just taking those texts and doing some sentiment analysis around that and some other things. Cloud Cherry kind of went away and some other things happened, to some degree. The program kind of lost its hold because we didn't keep driving it culturally. And unfortunately kind of lost its power, lost its voice, which is just another point of you got to keep these things so fresh. But it all comes back to that philosophy. It doesn't matter if you have buttons or tools. What matters here is that your people can represent with integrity the voice of the customer, that they think about beyond the transaction of it, that they want to actually help them and be the guide for them. And the organization is rallying around them to do that. They're free to serve in that way.
Yeah, way back when in the kind of early days of CRM, which kind of maybe puts a little bit more gray in my hair than I'd like, but we used to refer to it as the customer relationship murdering system because it was so non-functional. And I'm not going to name names because it was a long time ago and probably a company that's no longer in existence. But and again, we have to look at the tools and say, are they really enabling what we're trying to accomplish here? Or are they just enabling, these structures, these processes, these metrics that we've put in place and haven't looked at in a long, long time, right? So.